But Sean, let's move on. End the podcast with our top 10 fantasy wide receivers. If you haven't checked out on YouTube, 21 through 30, 11 through 20, you can go back and do that, obviously, after you listen to this portion. And let's get right into it. Number 10, or into it, if I can speak actual words. At number 10, we've got Davante Adams of the Green Bay Packers. Then at number 9, Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
That's Mark's guy.
Number 8, it is Mark's guy. I believe he had him the highest, I think. I'll have to check on that one.
Him and I had him tied.
Then at number 8, you had Larry Fitzgerald of the Arizona Cardinals, as Brandon likes to say. Number 7, A.J. Green of the Cardiac Cats, Cincinnati Bengals. Then at number 6, Keenan Allen of the L.A. Chargers. Number 5, Julio Jones of the Atlanta Falcons. Number 4, Michael Thomas of the New Orleans Saints. Number 3, Odell Beckham Jr., OBJ, cracking in at number 3. Then DeAndre Hopkins of the Texans at 2. And then the guy we all knew he was going to be 1. There was no question that he's the best fantasy wide receiver and should be drafted first in every league wide receiver-wise. Antonio Brown of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
The one thing I want to throw out there, and I want to start with Larry Fitzgerald, is just on the fact, because we'll get this out of there.
Yeah.
And I know some people love OBJ. Some people love him. You see what he did in his rookie year. You see what he did in his second year.
Antonio Brown's consistent.
He's a
Killer
monster.
bees, baby.
That's the thing, is Antonio Brown is going to dominate no matter what. OBJ, he's going to have a 37-year-old passing to him. At least Antonio Brown's 37-year-old is much better than Eli Manning.
Remember when Brandon Marshall was, I think, brand new to the New York team, made that bet with Antonio Brown, and Antonio Brown made him look like a fool.
It's the thing, is like at worst, Antonio Brown might get you 1,500 yards. At worst. Like, this guy's a monster. So I know OBJ might be more sexier. You might like him. If you want to pick him first wide receiver off the board, go ahead. I think the guy picking number 2 will love Antonio Brown.
Now, the guy I wanted to start with was Larry Fitzgerald. The reason why I wanted to start with Fitzy, both you and Mark had him just outside the top 10 at 11.
Yep.
I had him at 3.
Yeah, that's
and
insane.
Before I go to you, I just want to talk through my process here. And with me, could have put OBJ at 3, but the thing I look at with Larry Fitzgerald is last year with Carson Palmer, he had 161 targets, and that's even with...
He didn't have Carson for the full year.
He didn't have Carson for the full year, but that's even with John Brown on that team. That's even with having J.J. Nelson as a main target on that team. I look at Arizona, whether it's Josh Rosen, whether it's Sam Bradford, I think either of those quarterbacks helps out Fitzgerald and isn't a net negative without having Carson out there. Then I look at the rest of their wide receivers. You have Chad Williams. J.J. Nelson is still on the team, but he's listed now as a 4th stringer. You've got Bryce Butler, Christian Kirk. To me, I look at this team, and yeah, you can say he's the only one. Let's just double him. He's Larry Fitzgerald. I feel like having Sam Bradford with a Josh Rosen, either one of them is going to find him, and he is going to get his points, mainly because he's the only one there.
Fitz quietly is the top 10 wide receiver of all time.
Yeah.
And I'm not doubting that. And Larry Fitzgerald is a 34-year-old. Still looks like the same Larry Fitzgerald as he was back in 2010. Larry Fitzgerald is an ageless wonder. I'm not disagreeing with you. Larry Fitzgerald is one of the most targeted wide receivers and one of the most reliant wide receivers in the NFL. I'm not disagreeing with you. But the fact that you have him above Odell Beckham Jr. is literally hysterical. It's ridiculous. I understand OBJ coming off an injury is worrisome.
Let's think about this though.
Okay.
These aren't wide receiver rankings of best all time.
I know.
This is just fantasy production.
And I'm saying that's why you shouldn't have Larry Fitzgerald over Odell Beckham Jr. If we're doing all-time rankings, Larry Fitzgerald's above Odell Beckham Jr. It's not a question. But I'm saying Odell Beckham Jr. is in his prime. He is 25 years old, going to be 26 in November. In the 3 healthy years Odell Beckham Jr. has had, 2014, 2015, 2016, he has averaged 1,500 yards over 16 games and 13 touchdowns, 170 targets, and 107 receptions. Fitzgerald from 2015, 2016, 2017, and again, this is over 16 average, 152 targets, 108 receptions, so 1 reception more, 1,100 yards, which is 400 less. That's 40 points you're missing and 7 touchdowns. So there is a big difference between a healthy OBJ and the great Larry Fitzgerald. Larry Fitzgerald's going to be consistent. Larry Fitzgerald's going to get you 1,000 yards. He's going to get you at least 5 touchdowns. He's going to get you 100 receptions. But Odell Beckham Jr. is not if he's a top 3 wide receiver, but it's really a question of where you're going to put him. He's for sure a top 3 wide receiver. Most people probably have him at 2 as well. I put him at 2 because Odell Beckham Jr. is so explosive. He's uncontainable. He's a monster out there. He was unstoppable when he's healthy. OBJ is better than Larry Fitzgerald because he's younger, he's better, he's faster, he's stronger, and the only thing that Larry Fitzgerald has over him is he's healthier.
Here's another thing that plays into it in my mind is the Giants are not the same team they were last year or even 2 years ago, the last year that Odell was healthy.
But they're better.
They're
better in ways because Eli's still going to throw to OBJ, and now they finally have a running game to help him.
When we're talking about winning games, the Giants are probably going to have more wins in the win column, or more W's in the win column than the Cardinals at the end of the year. But I look at this Giant team. You look at the main wide receivers as of right now. Odell's going to be number 1. Sterling Shepard will be in the slot. Right now they're projecting Cody Latimer, the free agent they got from Denver, to be on the outside. Yeah, Latimer and Sterling Shepard are not in the same conversation here, but better weapons than what the Cardinals have. Plus you had Saquon Barkley. That's going to take away fantasy production from an Odell, I believe. And then the last little cherry on the top to me is you got Pat Shurmur running this team. We just talked about Pat Shurmur type teams last
Here's the
segment.
Difference. I know what you're going.
Is it could be Thielen's here and someone else is here.
Here's the
difference. And he's still going to get his, but I think Fitzgerald's going to have more.
Odell Beckham Jr. is 100 times better than Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. It's not even close. And yes, you're mentioning that they have a better team, they have more weapons, but did that stop Ben Roethlisberger from throwing to Antonio Brown?
No.
They have a better running back in Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell is a pass catcher out of that backfield. They had Martavius Bryant. They had Juju Schuster-Smith. They've had so many wide receivers in that slot next to Antonio Brown, on the other side of Antonio Brown, and he still dominates games because he's a game-changing wide receiver. Larry Fitzgerald is too, but Odell Beckham Jr. is in that top 3 tier, and Odell Beckham Jr., if he's healthy, will dominate the game just like Antonio Brown did. I understand your qualms, but this is something where talent is going to exceed a system, it's going to exceed other weapons, it's going to exceed everything. The only thing that matters is Odell Beckham Jr. is a guy that's going to be open, and he's a guy that already has a connection with his quarterback in Eli Manning. Josh Rosen might be better than Eli Manning. I'm not sure about that. Sam Bradford, when healthy, might be better than Eli Manning. But Sam Bradford's never healthy. Josh Rosen is a rookie. Eli Manning is a guy that's going to be able to get the ball to Odell Beckham Jr. The only question with Odell is his health, and maybe even the contract situation as well. But outside of that, Odell Beckham Jr., if he's on the field, he's going to be dynamic, and he's going to be putting up 1,500 yards and over 10 touchdowns.
Here's the thing. I feel like out of the guys in the top 10, you're using the wrong, I don't want to say the wrong guy because obviously, I had Odell Beckham at 4. It's not like I had Odell Beckham at 7 or 8. The guy that I think that gets screwed in my personal rankings by me having Fitzgerald at 3 and maybe having Michael Thomas at 5, but Julio Jones. Where you had Julio in the top 5, both Mark and I have Julio at 6.
This is the thing about Julio Jones. I feel like I need to respect Julio Jones because the thing is, I don't think you're too crazy having Julio Jones outside there. Julio Jones is one of the most talented wide receivers in the NFL, and there's no question about it.
Plus, they added Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, and this offense you think is going to get better than they were last year, and even then, last year, even though they weren't the same in 2016, he still had 148 targets, still had 88 receptions, 1,400 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But the thing with Julio Jones is he's not a touchdown machine, and he's never been. He had 10 touchdowns his sophomore year, but since 2015, he's had a high of 8, 10. Other than that, he's usually 6 or under. That's not top 5 wide receiver material, but it's the yardage. It's what Matt Ryan hits him for. He averages for his career, 15.5 yards per reception. He's a guy that can go out there and have a 255-yard game with 3 touchdowns, and then the next game he is banged up with turf toe, and then only gets like 2 catches. Julio Jones, when he's healthy, when he's when he's out there, is a guy that Matt Ryan loves and is a guy that can dominate the game. It's just a question of, will Matt Ryan be finding him in those right situations and being able to get you fantasy points out of touchdowns, and will Julio Jones be healthy? And also there's that contract situation. So I'm respecting Julio Jones for the fact that he is a dominating player. He could be even in the top 3 with Antonio Brown and with Odell Beckham Jr. I just put DeAndre Hopkins there because we saw what DeAndre Hopkins could do last year. There's not that contract concern, and he's getting Deshaun Watson back, who was a massive fan of him. And even then, DeAndre Hopkins proved that he could be a big asset without DeAndre Hopkins, or without Deshaun Watson. So Julio, it's really based off of record, and it's based on the force that he is athletically and size-wise. Julio Jones is pretty much unmatched talent and size-wise, but he's consistently not healthy, and he doesn't rack up touchdowns like Antonio Brown or Odell Beckham does.
Well, and the thing for me is when it came to Julio, where to put him, my decision was between him and Michael Thomas for 5 and 6. And the way I kind of mapped it out in my head, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I'll let you guys be the judge, is that Julio Jones, last year it was like Julio and Michael Thomas were both really good receivers.
Yeah.
You've got the Falcons, who have added Calvin Ridley, who I feel is going to benefit from Julio and Sanu getting most of the attention from defenses, and Ridley's going to be able to work in the middle with his big body. You've got Michael Thomas, who, some of those targets that went to Willie Snead, they got to go somewhere, and I think that even though Drew Brees spreads it out, I feel like more of those targets are going to go towards a Michael Thomas than a Ted Ginn.
I think when we're talking about top 10 wide receivers, you can't really worry about guys who are going to come back, who are going to take away targets from them. It's really who's going to take the touchdowns away from them.
True.
Michael Thomas is a guy that's still going to get 100 receptions. He's still going to be a guy that gets over 1,000 yards, maybe even 1,100 yards like he did last year. It's really a question of touchdowns. Michael Thomas last year went from 9 touchdowns to 5 touchdowns. Will Drew Brees be throwing the ball as much as he did? How much will that Mark Ingram suspension affect the first 4 games of the Saints offense? How much will Alvin Kamara take away and ball hog touchdowns away from him? That's the thing, is you have Alvin Kamara who can end a drive on one play because he's going to run 80 yards and take it to the house. So the biggest thing with Michael Thomas is touchdowns. Will he be able to put up top 10 wide receiver touchdown numbers? The same question really goes for Julio Jones. And I just feel like, again, Julio Jones is more proven. He's a better athlete. He's bigger. He's faster. And again, he's got a quarterback right now in Matt Ryan who throws the ball more than Drew Brees does. Drew Brees is a great quarterback. He's a great leader. But look at last year for Drew Brees. Drew Brees was not the same Drew Brees that we were accustomed to seeing. Drew Brees is getting older. Matt Ryan, I feel more confident with him throwing to Julio Jones than I do Drew Brees throwing to Michael Thomas. Again, I'm not trying to bash on Drew Brees. It's very close between him and Matt Ryan. But again, we're talking about accuracy over production. And last year we saw a massive drop-off from Drew Brees, almost 1,000 yards less throwing the ball from Drew Brees. And we're talking ultimately about fantasy here. Who I'm going to have on my team? I'm going to have Drew Brees as my quarterback. But again, if we're talking about fantasy output, we saw what Matt Ryan did in 2016, and we still saw Julio Jones be effective last year. Will Michael Thomas be able to get those touchdowns like he was able to in his first year, getting 9 touchdowns?
Now, a guy that I'm not, it's not a question of like, oh, how is this guy in the top 10? But it kind of is, to where you had him a lot more reasonable in my mind than Mark, and I know Mark's not here to defend himself, so I'm not going to harp on Mark having him at 5. But
love you, Mark.
Deonta Adams, like you have him at 9.
Davante Adams.
That's fine. But like myself, I had him at 15. I'm not like, the thing I worry about this Packer team is, of course, it's Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers comes back, and Aaron Rodgers falls into the field of Tom Brady, of Drew Brees, of I don't care what the name on the back of your jersey is. Are you open? Can I get it to you? That's all I care about, is winning games and throwing it to whoever. Plus, to me, and I might be higher on this man than some. I feel like you can be with me and behind me on this. I feel like this year,
I'm talking about Jimmy Grant.
No. Equiminius St. Brown is going to make his input, not as a main guy, but he is going to take targets and make his impact on this team as a big wide receiver by at least week 4. And to me, I wonder if this team, with the combination of Aaron Rodgers spreading the ball and rookies coming up and basically anyone kind of pitching in, that Davante Adams will be, he's a good receiver in fantasy, but is he a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy?
You're smoking something. I mean, this is Aaron Rodgers here. And even though Aaron Rodgers spreads the ball around, he still throws 40 touchdowns a year. So when a guy has to be getting the majority of that, Davante Adams in the past 2 years has been getting 12 and 10 touchdowns.
But do we know it's going to be him? Could it be Randall Cobb?
It wasn't Randall Cobb last year. It wasn't Randall Cobb the year before.
But Aaron Rodgers was injured most of the year.
But still, even then, Davante Adams was more of a guy that they put in their stock into. Davante Adams just got a massive contract from the Green Bay Packers. Randall Cobb might not be on the team. Randall Cobb has been a guy in trade rumors. Randall Cobb has been rumored to be going out of Green Bay, not being the number one wide receiver in Green Bay. Davante Adams has proved that he is the number one guy now, and especially with Jordy Nelson out, especially with Aaron Rodgers loving Jordy Nelson, he's going to have Davante Adams, who now needs to be his number one, and this is Aaron freaking Rodgers. This guy's going to throw for 5,000 yards. He's going to throw for 40 touchdowns if he's healthy, and he's going to look for his number one guy, and it's going to be Davante Adams, and Davante Adams is going to reap the benefits of being Aaron Rodgers' number one guy. He's finally going to crack 1,000 yards receiving, and he's going to still continue to get 10 touchdowns, 10-plus touchdowns this year. Aaron Rodgers, again, he spreads the ball around, but he still has his favorite guys. And this is, again, if I expect Aaron Rodgers to be healthy. This isn't something that's I think is going to be too damaging, like Andrew Luck's injury was. But I mean, you look at his guy in Jordy Nelson from 2013 to 2016 were the years that Aaron Rodgers was playing. Jordy averaged 1,300 yards, 93 receptions, and 12 touchdowns. That's top 10 wide receiver production. I think Davante Adams, again, being younger than Jordy was at that time, being more explosive, can be that guy. He also is a big red zone threat as well. Davante Adams has proven to be a guy that they just toss it up to in the corner. He goes up and grabs it. Being 6'1", 215, he has a weird ability to be a guy that they've looked to in the red zone and be a guy that comes down with big balls and big catches in the corner of the end zone. I think Davante Adams is I think you're sleeping on him. I think Mark might be a little bit high on him. I think putting him at 9 where I had him, again, weirdly enough, I think I was right.
So what you're saying is we got a little Goldilocks situation.
Yeah,
here.
I think
too cold, too hot, just right.
I think again you might have those worries about Aaron Rodgers spreads the ball around. That's why you have Mike Evans, who is a guy in Tampa Bay that has a guy in Jameis Winston that they have that connection already. And I'm not saying that Rodgers doesn't, but Jameis Winston's healthy. Mike Evans is also the only wide receiver on that team, pretty much. I mean, I know they still have Deshaun Jackson and stuff, but I mean they haven't proven to be a great connection so far. Mike Adams is the number one receiver and really the only guy that's going to dominate receptions and targets on that team. Keenan Allen did that last year with Phillip Rivers. The biggest question for Keenan Allen is health. And then again, we get into the Michael Thomas, the AJ Green, the Julio Jones era range. I think that Davante Adams, again, is better than Stephon Diggs, has more potential than Larry Fitzgerald. He can be an explosive guy that gets over 10 touchdowns a year and maybe 1,200 yards reception.
Do you think for me, I feel like I'm going to ask you this question. You're just going to say Larry Fitzgerald. Do you think that there's our top 10?
Yeah.
So Browns, Hopkins, Beckham, Thomas, Jones, Allen, Green, Fitzgerald, Evans, Adams. Just to read it off for you guys again. Foolproof top 10, or are you dumbfounded and surprised that somebody's in this top 10 that shouldn't be?
I wouldn't say Larry Fitzgerald. I'm dumbfounded Larry Fitzgerald's in there. I mean, Larry Fitzgerald, again, we're talking about, Davante Adams he's never had 1,000 yards receiving. So, again, there's questions and marks about how high his production is going to be. You look at AJ Green and Andy Dalton, they've been a potent connection before, but AJ Green's not consistently healthy. Is Andy Dalton going to be able to get him the ball like he was able to in 2016, 2015? You look at Keenan Allen's never healthy. Same with Julio Jones. Odell Beckham's coming off a major injury. Larry Fitzgerald is one of the most reliant guys. I don't think there's a guy I'm really questioned about. Like I'm really shocked that he's in the top 10. But there is questions about how healthy can somebody be. I think the biggest surprise might be DeAndre Hopkins at 2. I love DeAndre Hopkins. He's been a guy that I've drafted, I think, 4 consecutive years in fantasy. He's a guy that puts up big numbers.
That's just an odds thing. If 2 people put him at 2, 1 doesn't, he's going to be at 2.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. I'm saying that again. It's weird thinking that we look at Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham Jr., AJ Green. These guys as larger than life. Wide receivers. These guys were number 1, top 10 picks. These guys were, guys that we've consistently seen from college and on. And DeAndre Hopkins coming out of Iowa, a guy that isn't 6'4" like AJ Green and Julio Jones, but is a big body guy that can dominate the game with his body. And he's not as explosive as a guy like Antonio Brown is, but he's one hell of a wide receiver. And I think it's just surprising to see how far he has come. And I think it's really sorry, he came out of Clemson. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know why I said Iowa. DeAndre Hopkins is a guy though that again has been.
You were just thinking of Dallas being from Iowa.
I was thinking of Dallas from Iowa. I think there's another big body Iowa wide receiver that I'm thinking of, but it's not DeAndre Hopkins. But again, DeAndre is a guy that, again, he's been so consistent throughout the years. It's hard not to just put him there because, again, you look when he's been healthy and he's had a great quarterback, either be it Matt Schaub or be it Deshaun Watson, 1,500 yards before and 10-plus touchdowns. I mean, he's a guy that you expect with Deshaun Watson back, he's going to be a guy that puts up numbers and even proved without Deshaun Watson, he can do that.
There's one guy that, really he's at 9, so it's like 9 and 10. I wonder if Mike Evans, when we do these rankings at the end of the year, if we ranked like the top 10 at the end of the year, I wonder if Mike Evans will be in the top 10 at the end of the year. And the reason why I say that has nothing to do with necessarily Mike Evans. It has everything to do with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in general. Is Jameis Winston going to make the jump that we all expect him to make? Is like you give O.J. Howard, who's expected to make a jump this year. You have Brait, who got targets last year, plus they add Deshaun Jackson. Like, are you just going to completely ignore Deshaun Jackson on that offensive side? No, he was with Washington last year.
Last year he was?
Yeah, that's what it says here on
sure about that?
our lads. It says unrestricted free agent from Washington. Unless I'm totally off on that.
I think you're off.
He signed it last year.
I think he signed last year because wasn't there wide receiving core? Him, Vincent Jackson.
You're right. You're right. I was off. He was a few years ago. But I mean, you have then basically I'm talking with Howard and Brait with another year, or it's just I have so many questions about Tampa and I'm not high on it.
That's fair. And with Evans, I mean, you look so far. So far with that, it said TAM. I was like, is that Texas A&M? No, but it's Tampa, the abbreviation. But you look at his first 4 years, it's been hot and cold. 2014. 1,000 yards receiving, 12 touchdowns. Then you look at the next year, 1,200 yards receiving, nice, but only 3 touchdowns. Then you look in 2016, 1,300 yards receiving, 12 touchdowns. And then he goes back last year, 1,000 yards receiving, 5 touchdowns. So he's been hot and cold. He's a guy that's not really he hasn't been really trustworthy, independent, but you see that top end, and that top end's spectacular. He's a guy with a big body. He's got speed. He can dominate. You think if this is the year that Tampa Bay clicks, he's a for sure top 10 wide receiver.
The thing that also makes me wonder is, will this be another year where Tampa throws the ball more? Because Doug Martin's gone. He's now in Oakland. Jaquiz Rogers is right now the number 1 back, but many people are expecting Ronald Jones out of USC to be the number 1. Is he going to be the number 1 that Tampa Bay Buccaneer fans expect? I mean, on our running back video, there was something that goes, how do you not have Ronald Jones in the top 30? And it's one of those where if you're a Tampa Bay fan, you might be high on him, but will he be enough to be a consistent option there to help out, or will this Tampa team just be throwing it all over the yard?
And I think one reason, just going back to DeAndre Hopkins, I was thinking about this a little more. The one reason why I think I mentioned him being a 2 is just because I had OBJ at 2. I think it's insane again that we're kind of sleeping on OBJ. I get he's coming back from an injury, but this guy,
I think it's the Giants in general. It's not just OBJ.
They got better. We looked at him last year and saying, how could he not?
I'll just pick him to win the Super Bowl. That'll solve everything.
But I mean, let's look at him last year. I mean, we were talking about how crazy this wide receiving core was going to be. Brandon Marshall back from the Jets, Sterling Shepard, OBJ, one of the best wide receivers. And then, all of them get hurt and they all crumble. But now you have Evan Ingram. Now you have OBJ. Now you have Saquon Barkley. And you still have Eli Manning, who loves OBJ. I get it. There's more weapons out there. But again, number 1 weapons surpass those guys that are, trying to at least complement a guy in OBJ. OBJ can dominate a game, and I think that he will show that this year. He could possibly end up being the number 1 receiver after this year and take away that spot from Antonio Brown. I'm not saying it's going to happen because that'd be crazy of me, but I think OBJ is a solid 2, and that he's not, I think, is a little bit crazy.
Any final guys in this top 10 you want to mention that we didn't mention?
AJ Green. We didn't mention AJ Green and Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen had a fantastic year. We always thought he could when he was healthy. He's proven it before when he was healthy. Was fantastic last year. And again, the biggest thing for Keenan Allen if he's healthy, if he's able to play 16 games again, he'll give you 1,300 yards. And the fact that he only gave you 6 touchdowns last year was kind of surprising. I think Keenan Allen will, if he's healthy, could have a better year this year because he's going to be healthy. He's 26 years old. Him and Philip Rivers have that connection. It's going to be something interesting. And A.J. Green, too. Physical specimen. This guy's an absolute monster. I mean, the lowest amount of receiving yards he's had in his career is 964, and he only played 10 games that year. When he's healthy, he's playing games, he's going to get you, possibly 1,300 yards. And the biggest question for him is, will the Bengals be able to put up touchdowns? Will, Joe Mixon be able to help out Andy Dalton as much as we thought he would? Would, a guy like John Ross, who they drafted, be able to help this offense? If he is, I think A.J. Green, again, being a number one option, being the physical specimen that he can be, can get you 10-plus touchdowns like he did in 2013, 2012, and 2015, and get you near 1,300 yards like he did in 2012, 2013, and 2015. He just hasn't done that in the past 2 years, and I think that's why people might be sleeping on him a bit. But he's a guy that, again, if he's available in the 4th round, take him. Take him immediately.
This is where you guys actually, now at the end of this, we are officially halfway through our fantasy football rankings.
Ooh, tight ends next week.
Tight ends next week.
Who's your number one?
Who's my number one?
Yeah.
I'm leaning Gronk, but I'm not
sure. You should lean Gronk because he's the greatest tight end of all time.
I'm leaning Gronk, but I'm not sure. I haven't looked into it. Then we got defenses.
Who else would it be?
With kickers, I haven't talked this over with Mark yet. I think we're only going to do the top 15 kickers. I don't think we'll do, or maybe the top 10 kickers and then do 2 segments. I don't think we need to do all top 30 kickers.
How much can we talk about kickers too much?
I know. Really, you're in
the guys with the guys in the good offenses.
And plus, the largest league I've ever seen is a 16-man league. So maybe 16.
Take Greg Zuerlein, take Steven Gostkowski, take the guys on good offenses that are going to be able to at least get field goal attempts.
And Mark keeps saying he can't wait to talk kickers when we get to that one. But thank you guys for checking out the Onside Kick. Want to thank Dallas for joining us this one, bringing the great topic of it wasn't an awful decision for the Browns to draft Baker Mayfield. And this leads me right into the housekeeping. If you want to be like Dallas, you can go check out patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast, $10 tier. You get to come on any podcast you choose at that tier. Each and every month you're at that tier. Second, you can go to MVPMostValuablePodcast.com and you can check out our store. You can get the content that we have each and every day. That store link is also down below in the description. And last but not least, if you're on Apple Podcasts and on iTunes, go give the Onside Kick a 5-star rating. Type in what you like, why people should listen, and let them know why they should check out the Onside Kick. Before I officially wrap it up, you looked like you were going to say something?
I was just going to say, I don't think we fully answered the Browns thing. It's not an awful decision, but it was the wrong decision.
I think it wasn't an awful decision. I liked it for the Browns.
Should have gone Darnold.
He fits in with what that team wants to do. But thank you guys for watching on YouTube. Thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. And as always, have a good day, everybody.